The rain that has flooded the streets of Mogadishu today are not to blame for the cancellation of the FGS-FMS meetings scheduled for this week. The leaders of Puntland and Jubbaland declined to attend. That followed a rejection by the Puntland legislature of the National Assembly's assigning of 13 seats in the upper house to Benadir. Villa Somalia has expressed disappointment. Supporters of the meeting have suggested it be held without Puntland and Jubbaland. Galmudug has stepped up to offer an alternative venue for the meeting starting July 8th in Dumasarab. But this meeting would not include President Mohamed Farmajo and others from the federal government. It could achieve some consensus on important issues ahead of a full FMS-FGS meeting. Or it could lead to another impasse. Farmajo sent out invitations after a virtual meeting had outlined issues that need to be discussed. These include upcoming elections, security, particularly fighting terrorism, the economy, a constitutional review. Abdurrazzaq Aden was a senior advisor to former Somali President Sharif Sheikh Ahmed. He is also a former permanent secretary at the Ministry of Information. Mr. Aden has worked in the development sector in East Africa for the last 10 years and is currently the founder and executive director of Farsight Africa Research and Policy Studies.
Well, I think it is some sort of a disagreement on the issue of the agenda of the meeting, but also there is you have two sections of Somali federal government, including the parliament, and trying to hold universal election of one person, one vote, while generally you have forum for national parties, and also Jubbaland and also Puntland is trying to push timely election. And generally what I see is that the practical is to hold indirect election in Somalia on time. So the disagreement is about what kind of election Somalia needs to have. Well, generally for the last 20 years Somalia, since ARTA process, we have been having some sort of indirect elections where traditional leaders and they propose a delegate, and then MPs, federal parliament, has been elected through the clan lines. But generally Somalia couldn't defeat the key issues. One is the security issue, two, the corruption. So most of the analysts agree that the elections in Somalia, the indirect elections, is enhancing, not enhancing legitimacy, but it enhancing corruption. So you have federal elections held in number of states and number of cities, but generally is about buying votes and of course buying in. So most of the key issues here is that the indirect election and the leadership it produces and the government has not solved the key issues of Somalia. One, security, you can see. Two, the issue about corruption. Three, which is a major issue, is that the indirect elections discriminates against women and youth. In order to have some sort of political stability in Somalia, we need to see a Somali-led Somali solution. And that is, I think, the best way is that the government, the president of Somalia, and also federal member states, and also opposition leaders need to have some sort of national consultative meeting where they agree on a roadmap. And I think what the opposition and the federal member states they are looking for is that a compromise of, I think the best way is that creating and establishing Somali national unity government, where you have basically a roadmap, and the only mandate for the government of national unity has to be holding an election on time within 2 years. It is key, not only the opposition and the federal member states and the federal government agrees on a timeline, but they need to agree who is financing that kind of election. And it has to be the era of looking to the international community and saying, okay, pay our election, that's gone. The international community has their own challenges in London and in Washington and in everywhere. So you need to have some sort of resource sharing mechanism where probably 60% of the budget met by the federal government of Somalia, while 40% has to be met by the federal member states. The challenge of Somali politicians is that how do you follow up and how do you implement that kind of agreement so you don't have a disagreement within the process of 2 years. That is why it is vital to have a cabinet members proposed by federal member states. Say 2 cabinet members, each federal member states, they are 10, and then you have some sort of a capable, competent and experienced cabinet which has only mandate to hold the election. If you have a national consultative meeting in Mogadishu where you involve the federal member states leaders and also the president of Somalia, and then you have of course the presidents of course international community, I think the best way you can do is some sort of the Somali federal parliament and also the Senate adopt this kind of recommendation, so it becomes a law and it becomes an agreement where it's binding for everybody, the federal member states, but also is binding for the federal government of Somalia. So that the reason why I'm pushing forward the suggestion of national unity government is that it has been challenging to create some sort of an environment that trust. And when you have a national unity of government, and when you have budget contribution from federal member states to hold the election, and you have a cabinet members proposed by the federal member states leadership, then generally you have a different scenario. You have an atmosphere where there is a commitment, and mostly federal member states has been, their discussion has, we have a right, we have a right, we have a right. But it is time they also take an obligation and they need to contribute to the election budget. They need to put forward an idea of we are here to take part of the burden.